In the beginning, before the world we know, before mountains pushed their stony crowns into the sky, before forests and rivers, before even the simplest flower or blade of grass, there was an earth almost unrecognizable to us. An earth wrapped in shadows and fire, cloaked in gases and stirred by oceans that had only just begun to exist. And tonight, we will journey back, far, far back to the Archean Eon. A time so distant that the very rocks beneath your feet are younger than what we're about to imagine. A time when the Earth itself was still deciding what it meant to be a planet, when the first whispers of life stirred in the dark oceans, and when the sky may not have even been blue. Welcome to the faded clock, where we let time itself become a storyteller. If you haven't yet, take a gentle moment to subscribe, so that you may return again when your dreams call for another passage through forgotten ages. Now let us drift, not quickly, not hurried, but as though you were lying on a quiet shoreline, listening to waves that have been moving since the dawn of the world. Let us let go of today, of the modern world, and sink gently into a story billions of years in the making. Imagine, first, the calendar of Earth itself. If we stretch the entire history of this planet across a single year, from January 1st to December 31st, the Archean Eon begins in the first week of February and lasts until well into May. A season of origins, of chaos, of patience. It is within this stretch that continents first tried to rise, that seas spread, that air itself thickened and shifted. It is here that life flickered its very first flame. Perhaps you are already picturing it, the young Earth, still hot, still restless. Volcanoes rising and collapsing, seas steaming beneath skies heavy with carbon dioxide and methane. No birds, no insects, no mammals, not even fish. Only a canvas of molten rock and cooling water, where chemistry was slowly learning to become biology. But let us move carefully, step by step, because the world was not instantly what we imagine. The Archean did not begin in peace. It began in recovery. For before the Archean was the Hadean, the fiery age of bombardments, when the Earth was ceaselessly struck by asteroids, perhaps even by a Mars-sized body whose collision helped form our moon. By the time the Archean dawned, the scars of those impacts were still fresh, the crust still unstable, but the violence had lessened enough that oceans could linger. And it is in those oceans that so much of our story will rest. Close your eyes, if you wish, and picture standing on the rocky edge of that world. The air is thick, heavy, and would not be kind to breathe. It smells of sulfur and iron with faint traces of methane, like a brewing storm that never ends. Above, the sky is not the bright azure we know, but perhaps a hazy orange, tinted by the chemistry of gases and the dimmer light of a sun that was fainter than today. The sun, yes, for in those days, our star shone only about 70% as bright as it does now, and yet somehow the Earth was not a frozen snowball. Something, greenhouse gases, perhaps volcanic warmth, perhaps the insulating hug of dense clouds, kept the oceans liquid, kept the experiment of life possible. It is one of those puzzles scientists still ponder. As you drift with this thought, you might wonder, what did those oceans look like? Imagine waters not clear and blue, but greenish, even rust-colored, stained with iron and minerals leached from the young crust. Imagine tides tugged by a moon much closer than today, looming massive in the sky, pulling the seas with a force that carved rhythms into the Earth's very bones. It is here, in these restless waters, that the first cells may have emerged. Not yet the life we think of, no plants, no animals, but tiny bubbles of chemistry that found ways to copy themselves, to endure, to persist. Some clung to the edges of deep-sea vents, where hot fluids poured from beneath the crust, rich with energy. Others floated in shallow pools, warmed by sunlight and stirred by rain. We do not know their names. We cannot see their faces. But in every cell of your body there is a whisper of their survival. Because without them, without these first architects of existence, there would be no forests, no oceans filled with whales, no human hands to write or wonder. The Archean, then, is both alien and intimate. Alien, because it is a world so unlike ours. Intimate, because it is the cradle of all that followed. Perhaps where you are listening from tonight, the air is still. Or perhaps you hear faint sounds outside, cars passing, leaves rustling, rain falling. Let those modern sounds fade against the picture of this ancient earth. An earth with no cities, no music, no voices, only the raw heartbeat of geology and the first whispers of biology. The continents we know did not yet exist. Instead, the Archean earth was dotted with small proto-continents, like volcanic islands rising and sinking, colliding and merging, carried on currents of mantle heat. These landmasses were not stable. They fractured, shifted, disappeared. But slowly, very slowly, they laid the groundwork for what would become larger continents, the foundations of our modern world. Imagine walking, if you could, across such a landmass. The ground is bare, sharp black with basalt. No grass softens your steps, no trees offer shade. Rivers cut through raw stone, steaming as they carry minerals to the sea. Everywhere volcanoes rise, some small, others towering, spewing ash and gases into the sky. The nights are dark, with no stars quite as you know them, for the constellations have drifted over billions of years. And above all, the moon looms immense, filling the horizon with its silver glow. Perhaps, as you walk this imagined landscape, you pause at a shoreline. The waves crash with unusual force, pulled by that closer moon. You bend, scoop water into your hand and see that it is not clear but murky, filled with particles of iron. As the waves retreat, they leave behind streaks of rust-red sediment, the beginnings of the banded iron formations that geologists still study today. And in these waters, invisible to your eyes, are the ancestors of everything. Microbes, too small to notice, drifting, dividing, slowly inventing the rules of life. Some of them will stumble upon photosynthesis, finding a way to harness light. Others will master the chemistry of sulfur or iron, weaving energy from the minerals around them. What must it have been like, this slow awakening? To be the first to live, the first to replicate, the first to carve identity from chemistry. These cells could not know they were beginning a story, any more than we can know what stories may begin from our own lives. But in hindsight, they were the turning point. And so, as you lie here tonight, listening, perhaps you can sense the echo of that patience. Billions of years of patience, of trial and error, of chemistry searching for life, life searching for form, form searching for meaning. The Archean was not quick. It was not loud. It was, instead, a deep, slow rhythm like the steady beat of a drum in the background of time. Think of the earth then as a dreamer, just learning to dream. Its crust shifted, its seas boiled, its skies dimmed and cleared, and all the while hidden within, a secret unfolded, the secret of life. And though we call it ancient, though we measure its distance in billions of years, the Archean is still with us. In every microbe, in every rock, in every drop of water, traces of it remain. It is not gone, but alive in fragments, in whispers, in the deep memory of the planet. So let us not hurry. Let us stay in this place, on this shoreline of the young earth, and breathe slowly with the tides. Because from here, our journey will only deepen. We will follow the continents as they rise. We will trace the colors of the skies as they shift. We will listen to the voices of microbes as they invent new ways of living. And with each step, if you linger at that Archean shoreline, watching the tides drawn in and out by the moon, you may begin to notice how strange time feels here. Not in minutes, not in hours, not even in years. The Archean does not keep time as we do. Its rhythm is measured in millions upon millions of years, where the rise of a mountain is no more hurried than the settling of a single stone into the sea. And yet, even in this slow rhythm, changes are constant. The earth is not still, it is restless. Deep beneath your feet, molten currents surge through the mantle, dragging fragments of crust with them. Sometimes these fragments collide, fusing into larger blocks. Other times they tear apart, sinking back into the mantle's heat. To witness this, you would not see the quiet drifting of modern continents, but a restless dance, a ceaseless breaking and merging. Perhaps you are wondering how much land truly existed. The answer is, not much. Most of the earth was covered by ocean, vast and endless, a mirror of clouds and steam. But here and there, tiny proto-continents jutted above the waves. Think of them as volcanic plateaus, raw and jagged, with little stability. They rose quickly, but they also sank quickly, their foundations unable to endure. And upon these fragile islands, nothing green would meet your eye. No moss, no lichen, no plants at all. The land was barren, a desert of stone and ash, battered by winds heavy with volcanic gases. Rain fell often, acidic and warm, wearing channels into the rock, carrying minerals to the seas. At times, lightning cracked across the skies, igniting storms that raged for days, fueled by the thick and unstable atmosphere. The skies themselves were strange to behold. Without much oxygen, there was no ozone layer, no shield to scatter sunlight into a familiar blue. Instead, the heavens might have seemed hazy, tinged with orange, brown, or even a dim violet hue. The sun itself, fainter than today, hung in the sky like a pale disk, its warmth spread unevenly by the thick gases around the earth. Imagine standing beneath this sky at dusk. The moon, far larger than we see it now, climbs into view, pulling tides across the globe with such force that coastlines are reshaped daily. The stars above, though shifted in patterns unknown to us now, gleam through the haze, and perhaps comets still wander across the blackness, remnants of the chaos that once reigned upon Earth. And below in the oceans, the true story is unfolding. Tiny organisms, invisible to the naked eye, float in waters rich with minerals. They are simple, far simpler than any life we know, but they are already practicing the arts of survival. Some harvest energy from chemical reactions around deep-sea vents. Others learn to capture sunlight, tentative steps toward photosynthesis. In their quiet striving, they are reshaping the very chemistry of the planet. If you could drift down into the depths of these Archean oceans, you would see vents like towers, black smokers releasing plumes of hot, mineral-laden water into the sea. Around them, mats of microbes cling to the rocks, feeding on sulfur and iron, building tiny colonies in the shadows. It may seem still, but here, at the molecular level, a revolution is underway. Molecules are learning to replicate, to store information, to adapt. These are not yet animals or plants, but they are the seeds of everything. Perhaps as you imagine this unseen world, you feel a quiet wonder, that even in such hostile conditions, skies filled with gases, seas dark and metallic, land barren and volcanic, life found a way. That in the silence of the Archean, the first whispers of our story began. And yet, the earth was not always kind. Extinctions came easily. When landmasses fractured, when seas grew too hot or too cold, when chemistry shifted even slightly, entire populations of microbes might vanish. But others endured, carrying their fragile codes into the next age. It is in this endurance, this refusal to vanish entirely, that we see the resilience of life itself. From time to time, asteroids still struck the planet. Their impacts were fewer than in the Hadean, but still dramatic. A single strike could boil oceans, blacken skies, and spread molten rock across the land. And yet, after each blow, the earth healed. The seas settled. Microbes returned. The cycle continued. It is humbling to think of how much patience the Archean demanded. Billions of years passed in this state, oceans rising and falling, continents forming and breaking, microbes evolving at a pace so slow we can hardly measure it. And yet, without that patience, without that endless rehearsal, the later explosion of life would never have been possible. Picture, for a moment, the rocks of the Archean. They are not like most rocks around us today, for so few have survived. The Earth's crust is restless, recycling itself, swallowing its own past. But here and there, ancient fragments endure, tiny survivors of that distant time. When geologists hold them, they are holding some of the oldest pieces of Earth we can touch, stones that watched the Archean skies and felt the Archean rains. Within these rocks, scientists find chemical traces of early life, carbon ratios, isotopes, tiny whispers locked in stone. To think that a microbe drifting in an Archean tide left behind a signature that still speaks to us billions of years later. This is one of the quiet wonders of science. It is as though the Earth itself remembers, even when all else is forgotten. Perhaps you wonder what it felt like on those endless days and nights. To stand in that world would be to feel both awe and loneliness. The silence of land without voices, the crash of waves without seagulls above them. The glow of fire from distant volcanoes without cities to watch their light. Only the elements themselves, stone, water, air, fire, composing a symphony of their own. And yet, as alien as it seems, there is something strangely soothing in imagining it. A world uncluttered, raw and simple, a planet in its youth, still shaping its destiny. As you drift with this thought, let yourself feel the weight of time. Imagine millions of years passing like single breaths. Oceans spreading, shrinking, spreading again. Islands rising, crumbling, rising anew. Microbes drifting, dying, surviving. A world in constant motion, but never in haste. The Archean teaches us that patience is not empty. That from slow, quiet processes can come extraordinary outcomes. That even in silence, transformation is always underway. And so, as night deepens around you where you are, let the Archean seep into your dreams. Let the tides of that distant ocean wash over your mind. Let the vastness of time remind you how small worries can fade, how the earth itself has endured storms far greater, and yet always continued. For we are only beginning our journey. Ahead lies the rise of oxygen, the great shifts of climate, the birth of continents that will one day cradle forests and civilizations. But before we rush forward, let us linger here a little longer, in this world of strange skies and restless seas. For it is here that life took its first steps, here that the earth began to shape the path that would lead, eventually, to you. If you close your eyes and imagine the Archean seas once more, you may notice that their surface is only the beginning of the story. Beneath the waves lies an entire world of shadows and light, of heat and chemistry, where the earliest threads of life were being woven. Picture yourself sinking gently into that water, the surface above ripples, stained not blue but greenish and red with iron. As you drift downward, the light begins to dim, filtered by the haze of particles suspended in the water. Deeper still, faint glows appear, not from creatures as in modern oceans, but from vents on the seafloor, cracks in the earth's crust where heat and minerals surge outward. Around these vents, the ocean is alive in ways that almost defy imagination. Superheated water gushes upward, black with sulfides, rich with energy. The surrounding rocks are coated in microbial mats, thin films of early organisms clinging to the heat. To us, they would seem invisible, fragile, almost insignificant. And yet here, in these hidden corners of the earth, the seeds of complexity are being sown. It is often said that life began here, in these deep-sea vents. Not with sunlight, not with oxygen, but with chemistry. Iron meeting sulfur, carbon mixing with hydrogen, energy sparking where fluids collide. Tiny bubbles forming, breaking, reforming. Within them, molecules learn the art of replication, copying themselves again and again, sometimes imperfectly, and from those imperfections came the first sparks of evolution. Perhaps you are wondering why vents matter so much. The answer is that they provide both shelter and energy. In a world where the surface was harsh, bombarded by ultraviolet rays from a sky without ozone, battered by storms, shaken by impacts, the deep offered stability. And in the chemical gradients around vents, there was a kind of natural battery, a steady flow of power that could be tapped by the earliest forms of metabolism. Imagine those first cells as wanderers. They had no eyes, no sense of direction, but they moved with currents, with gradients, drifting toward heat, clinging to rocks, dividing slowly. Each division was a gamble. Some succeeded, some failed, but those that endured became the ancestors of everything to come. If you listen carefully to this image, you might hear a faint echo, not sound but rhythm. The pulse of water surging through the vents. The bubbling of gases released into the sea. The slow division of cells, like a heartbeat stretched across millennia. It is a music too slow for us to hear, and yet it was always playing. Above these deep oceans, storms raged across the surface. Lightning split the skies, striking the seas again and again, perhaps creating organic molecules in shallow pools. Rain fell endlessly, carrying nutrients from the raw land into the water. Rivers carved young valleys into the stone, leaving minerals behind. Every part of the earth, from the highest volcanic peak to the deepest trench, was participating in the experiment of life. And over unimaginable spans of time, something remarkable began to happen. Among these microbes, some discovered photosynthesis. At first, it may not have been the kind that produces oxygen. It may have been an earlier version, using hydrogen sulfide instead of water, producing sulfur as a byproduct. But slowly, through countless generations, others learned to split water itself, releasing oxygen into the world. To us, this seems small. A microbe invents a new way to feed itself. But in truth, it was one of the most radical revolutions in history. For oxygen is not only a gas, it is a force, a catalyst, a destiny. And though the Archean atmosphere was still mostly devoid of it, these first whispers of oxygen began to alter the chemistry of the oceans. Imagine the iron-rich seas. With every pulse of oxygen from photosynthetic microbes, iron in the water rusted, forming solid particles that sank to the seafloor. Layer after layer of iron accumulated, creating the banded iron formations we still find in ancient rocks today. Red and silver, iron and stone, these bands are the fingerprints of that invisible revolution. It is a strange thought, isn't it? That the ground beneath our feet, the very ores we mine for steel, are relics of that first great shift in the Archean oceans. That every time you see rust on metal, you are looking at a process first written into the world by those ancient microbes, billions of years ago. And yet, oxygen was a double-edged gift. To the microbes that produced it, it was power. To many others, it was poison. For life in the Archean had evolved in an oxygen-free world. When oxygen began to appear, it destabilized delicate metabolisms, driving many lineages to extinction. The oceans themselves may have shifted from green to rusty red, suffocating some ecosystems while nourishing others. Still, the process was slow. For much of the Archean, oxygen never rose high in the atmosphere. It lingered mostly in the oceans, in localized pockets where photosynthesis thrived. The great oxygenation of the skies would come later, in the Proterozoic. For now, Earth remained a place of haze and strangeness, a world still holding its breath. As you drift with these thoughts, you may begin to see the Archean not as a static place, but as a turning point. A world on the verge of something greater, experimenting with tools and energies that would one day shape forests, animals, civilizations. And yet it remained quiet, slow, humble. Perhaps where you are tonight, listening, you sense this same duality, the stillness of the moment and the possibility hidden within it. Just as the Archean carried within its silence the promise of future abundance, so too might your own quiet moments carry seeds of change you cannot yet see. Now let us return to the land, those fragile proto-continents that broke the ocean's endless horizon. Picture them smoking with volcanic vents, their slopes black with fresh basalt. Rain lashes them, carving channels. Lava cools and cracks, leaving ridges. No animals walk here, no plants, not even moss. And yet perhaps in the cracks between rocks, shallow pools gather, warmed by the sun, rich with minerals. In such pools, too, life may have stirred. Bubbles of organic molecules forming, breaking, reforming, until one endured long enough to replicate. It is in these pools that some imagine the origin of RNA, the molecules that carry instructions for life. Perhaps lightning struck, energizing the water. Perhaps cycles of drying and wetting encouraged chains of molecules to grow longer, more stable. If so, then even the barren land played its part in the awakening of life. As you walk across this imagined land, the silence is complete. The only sounds are wind and water, fire and stone. And yet hidden in droplets, hidden in vents, hidden in mats beneath the sea, life is humming. Not loud, not visible, but persistent. This persistence is the true character of the Archean. Not dramatic explosions, not sudden leaps, but slow endurance. Life survives not because it conquers, but because it adapts. Because it waits, because it is patient. And perhaps that is why, even now, imagining this world can bring a strange calm. For if life endured here, on a planet raw and unstable, beneath a dim sun, in oceans heavy with iron and skies without oxygen, then perhaps we, too, can endure the storms of our own lives. The Archean whispers, do not rush, do not despair. The story is long, and even the smallest beginnings can reshape the future. As we linger in the Archean, it becomes clear that to imagine this world is to accept paradox, a planet both fragile and fierce, a time both silent and full of hidden thunder. Every shoreline, every vent, every raindrop was part of a grand unfolding, and yet, to stand within it, you might never have guessed what was coming. Picture once more those iron-stained seas. At the surface, they shimmer under a faint sun, their color shifting with the play of clouds and volcanic haze. Waves roll heavy, pulled by a moon looming vast above, its tides sculpting coastlines with tireless force. The smell of sulfur and salt hangs in the air, the taste of metal lingers on every breeze. Beneath these waters, microbial mats spread slowly across rocks, weaving filaments, secreting slime, building colonies. Though they are too small for us to see, their presence is immense. In their collective billions, they transform the chemistry of entire oceans. Some use light, drawing in photons like gifts from the sky. Others harvest energy from minerals, breathing iron or sulfur, exhaling traces of gases into the water. Together, they form a hidden web of life, fragile yet unstoppable. If you lean closer in this vision, you might see structures forming, layered mounds of microbes, each layer building upon the last, generation after generation. These are stromatolites, living monuments of the Archean. To us, they appear as dome-shaped rocks, but in truth they are the handiwork of countless microbial communities, trapping sediments, binding themselves together, leaving fossils that endure even now. Imagine kneeling beside a shallow bay where stromatolites rise like stone gardens. The tide laps gently at their edges. With each ripple of water, new layers are added, thin films of life settling into place. Over centuries, millennia, millions of years, these mounds grow slowly, patiently, until they stand as silent witnesses to the dawn of biology. To see a stromatolite is to glimpse the earliest architecture of life. Not grand palaces, not towering forests, but simple domes of persistence. They remind us that complexity is not required for significance, that sometimes simply enduring, simply continuing, is enough to shape worlds. And yet, even as stromatolites flourished, much of the earth remained hostile. Vast regions of the ocean were anoxic, devoid of oxygen, heavy with iron and sulfur. Volcanic eruptions clouded the skies, casting shadows across the seas. Rivers carried torrents of minerals from unstable landmasses, changing the balance of nutrients in unpredictable ways. Life survived not in comfort but in challenge. It is tempting to wonder, if we could step into those waters, could we survive? The answer is no. The Archean seas would have been toxic to us, their chemistry harsh, their lack of oxygen deadly. The atmosphere above would have choked our lungs, burned our throats, stripped our protection from the sun's rays. And yet, for the microbes of that age, this world was not hostile, it was home. In this lies another paradox. What seems uninhabitable to us was the perfect cradle for them. Life does not demand that the world match its needs. Life reshapes itself, and in doing so it reshapes the world. Perhaps as you sit with this thought, you feel the slow humility of it, that our earth was not made for us. That we are the inheritors of a planet shaped first by microbes, by vents, by oceans older than memory. That everything we know rests upon the quiet work of organisms too small to see. The Archean also holds mysteries that even now remain unsolved. How exactly did life begin? Was it in the boiling vents of the ocean floor, or in the warm, shallow pools on land? Was it sparked by lightning, or nurtured by minerals that acted as natural catalysts? Or perhaps life did not begin here at all. Perhaps it was seeded by comets or asteroids carrying organic molecules across space. Each possibility carries its own wonder. If life began in vents, then the earth itself is a cradle, its inner heat birthing complexity. If it began in pools, then sunlight and cycles of rain and drought gave the first push. If it was seeded from space, then we are connected not only to Earth, but to the wider cosmos, our origins written in the chemistry of stars. No answer is certain. And perhaps it is fitting that the question remains open, for to know everything is to end the story. To wonder is to keep it alive. Imagine, if you will, the Archean night. The sun has set behind a hazy horizon, leaving the land in darkness. Volcanoes glow faintly with lava, casting orange light across jagged rocks. The moon rises, vast and luminous, its gravity tugging the tides. Above, the stars shine through the thinning haze. To our eyes, the constellations would be unfamiliar. Time has shifted them beyond recognition. Yet their light still travels, unchanged, across the eons. Perhaps comets streak across the sky, their tails glowing faintly as they pass. Perhaps meteors burn in brief flashes, reminders that the universe beyond is not still. For though the heavy bombardment of the Hadean has passed, the Earth is never fully safe from cosmic visitors. From time to time a strike still comes, carving craters, stirring seas, shaking continents. And each time life must endure, adapt, continue. In this way the Archean teaches resilience. Not resilience in triumph, not resilience in strength, but resilience in patience. To bend without breaking. To adapt without resistance. To persist not in comfort but in persistence itself. And so, as you drift with this vision, perhaps you feel a kinship with those ancient microbes. They were small, fragile, vulnerable, and yet they carried within them the possibility of everything. Just as we, too, may carry within us possibilities we cannot yet see. From time to time, we find fragments of this story locked in stone. In ancient rocks, scientists discover carbon isotopes, chemical signatures that hint at life's earliest presence. In the layers of iron, they read the rise of oxygen. In the fossils of stromatolites, they see the architecture of microbial communities billions of years old. To hold such a rock is to touch time itself, To trace with your fingers the record of a world before animals, before plants, before even the air we breathe. To feel the weight of patience pressed into stone. The Archean may seem far away, unreachable, but in truth it is always with us. In every breath of oxygen, in every grain of iron, in every cell of our bodies, its memory lingers. For we are not separate from that time, we are its continuation. And so, as we close this chapter of the journey, imagine yourself once more standing on the shore of that distant earth. The waves crash, heavy with minerals. The air is thick, tinted orange by haze. The land is raw, sharp, unsettled. And yet beneath the surface life stirs, tiny, invisible, but unyielding. The earth dreams in slow rhythms. The microbes whisper in silence. And though no eyes are yet here to see, no ears to hear, no hearts to understand, the world is already alive with story. To remain with the Archean earth is to learn how to see differently. Our senses, trained to notice trees, rivers, birds, and the colors of flowers, would find little to grasp here. And yet, if you look not for what is familiar, but for what is unfolding, the world becomes full. Imagine once more the restless seas. Their surface is ceaselessly stirred by winds heavy with volcanic gases, their tides pulled strong by a nearby moon. These waters hold more than waves. They hold stories slow as stone, vast as time. With every ripple, elements mingle, iron from the land, sulfur from the vents, carbon from the sky. Each meeting of molecules is a chance, a possibility, a small rehearsal for what life might become. It is here, in the mingling, that the Archean offers us its lessons. Life does not emerge from isolation. It comes from contact, from collision, from exchange. Where chemicals meet, something new can arise. Where boundaries are crossed, possibility awakens. If you drift below the waves, you may picture mats of microbes clinging to rocks, weaving thin films across the surface. Within these mats, countless individuals live together, each one tiny, each one insignificant on its own. But as a community, they create stability. Some harvest light, others process minerals, others recycle waste. In their cooperation, the colony endures. To think of this is to recognize that even at life's beginning, interdependence was essential. That survival was never a solitary act, but a weaving together of different abilities, different roles. Perhaps as you lie listening, you can reflect on how this echoes in your own world, that no life, however great, exists apart from others. That endurance is a collective art. Above these seas, the continents continued their restless dance. Small fragments collided, fused, tore apart. Each collision raised mountains that were soon eroded by heavy rains. Each fracture carved valleys filled again by lava. The land was never still, never stable. And yet from this instability came progress. For as land rose, it gave rivers to the seas. As it fell, it returned minerals to the cycle. The Earth's chaos was its own kind of order. Picture walking along such a proto-continent. The ground beneath your feet is hot, fractured, raw. Steam vents hiss from cracks. Rivers rush swiftly, brown with dissolved minerals. Far in the distance, a volcano erupts, painting the sky with ash. Lightning flashes through thick clouds. And yet, in a shallow pool, where rainwater collects and sun warms the surface, chains of molecules quietly assemble. Each day the pool dries slightly, concentrating the soup of chemistry. Each night it fills again. Over time, strands of RNA perhaps begin to copy themselves, imperfectly but persistently. In that imperfection lies evolution. What must it have been like, this slow, blind experimentation? No intention, no awareness, only the physics of matter obeying its rules. And yet from that blindness, meaning would one day emerge. From molecules that could not think would arise creatures that could imagine. From cells that drifted unseen would come minds capable of gazing back across billions of years. It is almost a meditation to imagine it. the simplicity of beginnings, the patience of molecules trying and failing again and again until one arrangement endures. The earth itself seemed to wait, offering oceans and time as an endless laboratory. And so, the Archean carries a strange beauty, not the beauty of landscapes or flowers, but the beauty of persistence, the beauty of possibility that lingers long enough to become real. Perhaps where you are tonight, you can sense that same kind of quiet beauty, the beauty not of sudden triumphs but of slow unfolding. The beauty of seeds in soil, of habits repeated, of patience kept even when results are unseen. The Archean whispers that patience is not wasted, that every small effort may leave traces far beyond what we imagine. Meanwhile, in the oceans, the experiment of photosynthesis continued. Stromatolites rose in shallow bays, their layers thickening, their communities spreading. With each day, oxygen was released into the water. With each century, the chemistry of the sea shifted slightly. Iron rusted, fell to the seafloor and built new layers of stone. Slowly, the balance of the world tilted. And yet, oxygen was not a gift to all. For many microbes, it was a toxin. Whole populations vanished, unable to cope with this new waste gas. Others survived only in places where oxygen could not reach, deep in the mud, hidden in vents, sheltered from the changing sea. But those that adapted to oxygen gained a power unlike any before. They unlocked new energy, new possibilities, new paths forward. This too is the Archean's lesson, that change is both destruction and creation, that what poisons some will empower others, that the same element can be both death and life, depending on who meets it. As you rest with this thought, perhaps you can reflect on how change has touched your own life. The moments that felt like endings, that later revealed themselves as beginnings, the losses that created space for growth, the storms that washed the way clear. The Archean is not only ancient history, it is a mirror of transformation itself. Now imagine once more the Archean night. The air is thick, the stars are strange, the moon is close. Volcanoes flicker along the horizon, their glow mirrored in the restless sea. No voices call out, no creatures stir on land. And yet if you could listen beneath the waves, you would hear the faint hum of life at work. Not with sound, but with chemistry. Molecules moving, cells dividing, oxygen forming. The quiet industry of existence, shaping the path of all that is to come. Perhaps you pause at this shoreline in your imagination. You feel the wind heavy with sulfur. You hear the waves pull and crash. You see the moon's reflection ripple across the dark water. And you know that though this world is alien, it is your ancestor. That the blood in your veins, the air in your lungs, the very atoms in your body, all trace back to this time. That in some hidden sense you have always been here. The Archean is not gone. It lives in the deep oceans where microbes still breathe sulfur, in rocks that still bear iron's rust, in stromatolites that still grow slowly in a few shallow seas today. It lives in you, in the oxygen you breathe, in the cells that burn it for energy, in the code of DNA that evolved from those first fragile strands. So let us honor this time, not as distant but as present, not as alien but as kin. For to sleep beneath the Archean sky is to sleep within the cradle of everything. And as you drift with this image, perhaps you too can feel the patience of that age settling within you. A reminder that the story is long, that change is slow, and that even in silence, life is always unfolding. As we journey further into the Archean, it becomes easier to forget the world we know. To set aside forests and rivers, birdsong and cities, and instead allow ourselves to drift entirely into that alien, ancient earth. In doing so, we may notice something remarkable, that even without the life forms we recognize, the planet was already alive in its own way. Picture again the seafloor, far below the restless tides. Hydrothermal vents rise like chimneys, their plumes twisting into the dark water. Around them, minerals settle in shifting clouds, painting the ocean with colors we cannot see in our modern seas. It is here that the earliest forms of metabolism continue their patient experiments. Sulfur, iron, carbon dioxide, all are drawn into the cycles of chemistry that over time become the cycles of life. Close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine being carried by the currents near one of these vents. The water is hot where it leaves the earth, yet quickly cooled as it mingles with the ocean. You drift past rock surfaces coated with microbial mats, shimmering faintly as layers of cells overlap, each one harvesting energy in its own way. To you, they are invisible, but if magnified, you would see communities built with astonishing complexity. Filaments intertwining, bubbles forming, colonies sharing resources. What seems like slime to us is, in truth, the earliest architecture of life. Above, closer to the surface, other colonies float where light can reach. They are fragile, scattered, and yet their collective activity alters the planet itself. Through photosynthesis, they slowly release oxygen into the water, changing the balance of chemistry, painting the oceans with iron rust, leaving behind patterns that will fossilize into stone. This balance is delicate. Too much oxygen in one place and the community collapses. Too little and photosynthesis falters. Yet through endless trial, life finds equilibrium. This rhythm of give and take, of flourishing and collapse, is the Archean's silent heartbeat. Perhaps, as you listen now, you can sense this rhythm as though it echoes through time. The rise and fall, the surge and retreat, not unlike the tides of your own breath. In, out. In, out. The Archean whispers that even across billions of years, life has always known how to breathe in its own way. Meanwhile, the land continued to change. Though barren, it was not lifeless in its potential. Volcanic islands grew, collided, sank again. In the shallow pools they left behind, chemistry brewed new experiments. Rain, warm and acidic, carried minerals across raw stone. Lightning, frequent in the unstable skies, delivered jolts of energy. Each of these forces contributed to the slow emergence of complexity. The continents of the Archean were not like ours. They were small, unstable, vulnerable, but in their fragility they provided opportunities for change. Their erosion fed the seas with nutrients. Their shifting provided new coastlines, new pools, new laboratories for life. The instability itself was fertile. And above it all, the skies told their own story. The sun shone fainter than today, and yet the earth remained warm enough for liquid oceans. Scientists call this the faint young sun paradox. How could a weaker sun still allow for liquid water? The answer may lie in the atmosphere, thicker than today, rich in greenhouse gases, trapping heat and keeping the planet from freezing. Methane, carbon dioxide, and water vapor combine to create a blanket of warmth. Without this, the seas may have frozen, and life's experiment stalled. The paradox reminds us how fragile balance can be. A slight change in chemistry, and oceans could have been locked beneath ice. Another shift, and the earth could have boiled. But somehow, through all the turbulence, the balance held. Enough warmth, enough stability, enough time. The planet itself seemed to cradle its own possibility. Perhaps you wonder what colors this sky held. Without oxygen, there was no ozone layer, no bright scattering of blue. Instead, the air may have appeared hazy, tinted orange or red by methane, or perhaps a muted violet beneath the dim sun. To us, it would seem strange, almost alien. And yet to the microbes below it was home. The moon, too, was different. Much closer than today, it loomed large in the night sky, tugging at the seas with powerful tides. Days were shorter then, perhaps only 15 or 16 hours long, because the earth spun more quickly. With each tide the ocean surged, mixing nutrients, shaping coastlines, stirring life's chemistry. The closeness of the moon was not only a spectacle, but a force that sculpted the rhythm of the Archean. Imagine standing on a rocky shore, the moon filling the horizon. Its reflection ripples across the iron-stained water. The tide pulls back with immense strength, leaving shallow pools where microbes concentrate, where chemistry is intensified by evaporation and sun. Each day, each tide, provides another chance for molecules to assemble, for life to find new ways to endure. This interplay of earth, moon, and sun created a stage unlike any other. And upon that stage, life performed its quiet play. No audience, no applause, only the endless unfolding of possibility. And yet, as we look back, we cannot help but be the audience now. We see in these slow processes the foundation of everything that followed. We see in the faint haze of the Archean sky the conditions that made our breath possible. We see in the iron bands of stone the signatures of microbes that lived and died billions of years before us. We see in the patience of molecules the origin of our own thoughts. The Archean is not only history, it is heritage. It is the ground beneath every step we take. It is the air filling our lungs, the water in our veins, the fire of energy in our cells. All of it began here in silence, in patience, in the slow rhythm of oceans and stone. So let us not rush away from it. Let us linger at this shoreline of time and breathe with the tides. Let us remember that the earth has always known how to endure, and that we, too, are part of that endurance. Perhaps, as you lie listening now, you feel yourself drifting, as though carried by those Archean currents. The world you know softens, and you are left with only the hum of oceans, the glow of a massive moon, the haze of a sky unrecognizable. Strange, yes, but also calm. A reminder that life has always found a way. A reminder that you, too, are part of that ancient story. If you rest now in the Archean night, with the moon immense above the horizon and the seas pulling back in powerful tides, you may begin to sense how vast and quiet this eon truly was. It stretched across nearly a third of Earth's history, billions of years passing without forests, without animals, without even the simplest plants. To us it may feel empty, but within that emptiness the world was preparing. Let us return once more to the shallow seas, where stromatolites rose like slow-growing reefs. Imagine wading through warm, mineral-rich water, your feet sinking into soft sediment. Around you, dome-shaped mounds rise from the shallows, each one built by countless generations of microbes layering themselves over centuries. Their surfaces are slimy, their growth almost imperceptible, but their persistence transforms the environment itself. These stromatolites are among the oldest living structures still present today, though rare. In a few quiet bays of Western Australia and elsewhere, they continue their patient work, just as they did billions of years ago. To look at them is to look into the Archean, to glimpse a world where life expressed itself not with movement or sound, but with the quiet endurance of layered growth. Perhaps you can imagine kneeling beside one. The tide laps at your hand as you touch its surface, and though it feels like stone, you know it is alive, built by colonies of microbes that breathe light. The layers beneath your touch are ancient compared to your life, and yet, compared to the span of the Archean, even they are young. The atmosphere above these waters remains thick, heavy with methane, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. Oxygen lingers only in pockets, near where photosynthesis has been at work, but never yet in the air as we know it. Without oxygen, there is no ozone to protect against ultraviolet light. Sunlight strikes the surface harshly, its rays dangerous to unshielded molecules. And yet, this too becomes fuel for chemistry. Energy from the sun, filtered through a hazy sky, helps build complex organics in shallow pools. Life, then, did not merely survive the Archean, it thrived in ways suited to its environment. What seems harsh to us was fertile to them. They breathed what we could not, they fed where we would starve, they endured in places we would perish. The Archean reminds us that life is not bound to our perspective. It adapts, reshapes itself, finds home where none seems possible. Meanwhile, the continents continued their restless growth. Though small, they collided, fused, and pulled apart in a ceaseless cycle. Each time they met, mountain ranges rose. Each time they broke, valleys spread wide. These proto-continents, though fleeting, carried the seeds of the stable landmasses we know today. The rocks formed in those collisions are among the oldest we can still find, their minerals carrying the memory of a time when the Earth was still learning how to wear continents. Imagine standing on such a landmass. The ground is black with basalt, cracked by fissures where lava seeps upward. Steam rises from pools heated by magma below. Rain falls often, feeding rivers that rush across the raw terrain, carving deep channels into soft stone. With no roots to hold the soil, with no plants to slow erosion, the land is quickly worn down, its minerals carried to the seas. Each cycle of erosion feeds life in the oceans, providing nutrients that fuel microbial growth. The Archean teaches us again, destruction and creation are not opposites, but companions. The breaking of land nourishes the sea. The death of microbes fuels others. The rusting of iron clears the water for new possibilities. The world does not move in lines of progress, but in cycles, each one feeding the next. And yet, for all this transformation, the Archean remained largely hidden in silence. No animals leapt through its waters. No forest rustled in its winds. The soundscape was raw, volcanoes erupting, waves crashing, winds tearing, lightning splitting the skies. No voices yet softened these sounds, no wings or songs or footsteps. Only the elements themselves, composing the first music of the earth. Perhaps you can hear it now, in your imagination. The deep rumble of magma moving below, the hiss of steam from fissures in the ground. The endless crash of heavy waves against rock, the occasional strike of a meteor, echoing like a distant drum. This was the Archean symphony. And within it, life's melody played quietly, almost hidden. Cells dividing, mats thickening, oxygen bubbling invisibly into water. Too quiet for the senses, too small for sight. And yet, this melody would one day grow into the full chorus of Earth's biosphere. What is most humbling is how long this took. For nearly 2 billion years, the Archean unfolded with this slow rhythm. Life remained microbial, oceans remained dominant, continents remained fragile. To us, accustomed to rapid change, this seems endless. But in the patience of the Archean lies the secret of endurance. Imagine yourself watching as centuries pass in minutes, millennia in hours, eons in days. Continents drift, collide, vanish. Volcanoes rise, erupt, collapse. Oceans surge, recede, shift their chemistry. And through it all, the microbes endure, adapting, inventing new ways to draw energy, building structures like stromatolites, leaving traces in stone. It is a time-lapse of resilience, a portrait of patience. And so, the Archean becomes not only history but metaphor. It reminds us that foundations are laid slowly, invisibly, often without recognition. That what feels stagnant may in fact be preparation. That silence itself can be fertile ground for transformation. Perhaps tonight, as you drift with these images, you find comfort in this. That even when change feels absent, something is always unfolding. That the deepest transformations may be the ones we cannot yet see. That patience itself is a form of progress. The Archean whispers this to us. The story is long. The story is slow. But the story always moves. Now let us return once more to the shoreline of that distant world. The moon casts its reflection across the sea. The tide pulls back with strength, leaving behind shallow pools. In one such pool, warmed by sunlight, molecules swirl and concentrate. Some form strands that copy themselves, imperfectly but persistently. Others break apart, only to reform again. Each moment is small, but across time, these moments weave into the fabric of life. You watch as the tide returns, washing over the pool, mingling its contents with the wider ocean. The experiment begins again, endlessly repeated until chance and time create stability. From these shallow beginnings, the path of life continues. And though no eyes are here to witness it, though no minds yet reflect upon it, the earth already holds within it the promise of all that will follow. The Archean night, silent but alive, cradles the future in its patient hands. If you let your imagination linger at the edge of an Archean shoreline, you may begin to notice how deeply this world is shaped by cycles. Not just the tides pulled by a closer moon, but cycles of chemistry, cycles of creation and destruction, cycles of silence and eruption. Everything about the Archean moves in rhythms, slow and vast, but always turning. Consider the cycle of iron. The seas, heavy with dissolved iron, shimmer in colors we do not see today, greens, browns, reds. When photosynthetic microbes release oxygen, that iron rusts, falling to the seafloor in layers. Over time, bands of red and silver form, pressed into stone, marking the rise and fall of oxygen in the oceans. Each layer is a record, a quiet diary kept by the earth itself. These banded iron formations found in ancient rocks today are among the clearest whispers of that time. They tell us that the Archean was not static, but dynamic. That oxygen appeared, disappeared, and returned again in slow waves. Imagine holding such a rock in your hand. It is striped like a layered cake, red with rust, dark with iron, silver with silica. Each band may represent a cycle millions of years long. To run your fingers across it is to trace the pulse of oceans that existed billions of years before your birth. It is to hold time itself, pressed into mineral memory. Then consider the cycle of continents. Land rises through volcanic eruption, collides with other fragments, and forms mountains. Rain wears those mountains down. Rivers carry their minerals back to the sea, and eventually the land may sink once more into the mantle. The Archean earth was restless with this cycle, never still, always remaking itself. Continents were not yet stable platforms, but wandering rafts of rock adrift on molten seas below. Yet slowly, through endless collisions, the foundations of future continents were laid. Or consider the cycle of life itself. Microbes divide, spread, alter their chemistry, collapse, and begin again. Photosynthesis appears, oxygen poisons some, empowers others. Each change ripples outward, altering oceans, altering rocks, altering the very atmosphere. What begins as a single microbial innovation reshapes the destiny of the planet. To see the Archean clearly is to see that nothing is fixed. Everything is in motion, though at scales so vast that to us it seems like stillness. Just as a mountain seems unchanging to a human life, but in truth is always rising, always eroding, always flowing with the mantle's currents, so too the Archean world was always moving beneath its silence. Perhaps as you reflect on this, you notice how cycles echo in your own life, breaths in and out, days rising and falling, seasons repeating. Moments of growth, moments of retreat. The Archean whispers that these rhythms are not accidents, but part of the fabric of existence itself. To live is to move in cycles, no less than oceans and continents. Now imagine traveling across one of those early landmasses. The surface is raw, broken by fissures, scarred by eruptions. Rivers rush across black basalt, carving channels without trees or roots to slow them. Steam rises from vents, carrying sulfur into the air. Pools of water collect in cracks, warmed by the sun, their chemistry changing with every tide and storm. To walk here is to walk a world still being written, a draft of the earth we know. And above, the sky is thick and strange. Without an ozone layer, ultraviolet light pours down unchecked, bleaching the surface. Clouds heavy with volcanic gases shift and break, sometimes letting the pale sun shine through, sometimes covering the world in haze. At dusk, the horizon glows orange or red with methane. At night, the moon rises immense, its tides pulling not only the seas but the earth's crust itself, stirring the inner fires. It is a world both hostile and beautiful. Hostile to us, but perfectly suited to the life that was forming within it. Now let us descend again, this time not to the shallow stromatolite reefs, but deeper, to the volcanic arcs where land and sea meet. Here, magma pours into the water, cooling instantly into glassy rock. Minerals seep out, feeding nearby microbes. Cracks in the crust open into hydrothermal vents, where superheated water gushes, rich with sulfur and iron. Around these vents, colonies thrive, feeding not on sunlight but on chemistry. They form ecosystems that could survive even without the sun. These vent communities may be the closest reflection of life's beginning. Even today, deep-sea vents host organisms that seem almost alien, worms without mouths, bacteria that eat sulfur, creatures glowing faintly in the dark. Their ancestors may trace directly back to the Archean, carrying within them the resilience of that age. Think of how profound this is. That even now, billions of years later, there are places on Earth where life continues almost exactly as it did in the Archean, without oxygen, without sunlight, relying only on chemistry and heat. These are living fossils, reminders that not all of life marched forward into complexity. Some remained as they were, perfectly suited to their ancient way of being. The Archean is not only in rocks, then. It is alive, still breathing in the depths of our oceans. And so, the Eon speaks not only of origins but of continuity. Life does not erase its past, it carries it forward. Each innovation builds on what came before, but never entirely replaces it. Oxygen-breathing cells did not erase sulfur-breathing cells. Plants did not erase microbes. Animals did not erase plants. We, too, did not erase what preceded us. We carry them, inside us, in our mitochondria, in the very DNA that first learned to replicate in those Archean seas. Perhaps you find comfort in this continuity. That you are not separate from the Archean but its heir. That in every breath you take, you are linked to those microbes. That in every beat of your heart, you echo the patience of that ancient world. Now picture the passage of time once more. Millions of years slip past like waves. Continents rise, break, and sink. Stromatolites thicken, layer by layer. Iron falls, bands the ocean floor. Oxygen accumulates in pockets, poisoning some, empowering others. The balance shifts slowly, until the world stands on the threshold of transformation. The Archean is ending, though it does not know it. A new Eon will come, where oxygen will flood the skies, where continents will grow more stable, where the stage will be set for the rise of complex life. But here in these final chapters of the Archean, the world is still quiet, still microbial, still patient. And so, as you drift in this story, perhaps you too can rest in that patience. You need not hurry. You need not know what comes next. It is enough to breathe with the tides, to imagine the ancient sky, to feel the slow rhythm of a planet learning to be alive. The earth dreams still, and within its dream we drift. As we remain within the Archean, perhaps you notice how much of this world unfolds not in grand gestures but in subtleties. A molecule learns a new trick. A microbe divides in a slightly different way. A shallow pool dries a little longer in the sun before filling again with rain. Each change is small, but across millions of years the small becomes monumental. Take, for instance, the slow appearance of oxygen. For so long the Archean earth breathed without it. Microbes thrived on sulfur, iron, and methane. To them, oxygen was dangerous, a reactive gas that tore apart delicate chemistry. And yet, some organisms found a way not only to survive it, but to produce it, by splitting water with sunlight, photosynthesis in its oxygenic form. At first, this change was barely noticeable. A bubble here, a film of oxygen there, quickly consumed by iron in the water or gases in the air. But slowly, steadily, oxygen began to accumulate in the oceans. The iron rusted and fell, forming those great banded iron layers on the seafloor. Once the iron was used up, oxygen lingered longer in the water, still small, still localized, but building. This was the beginning of something vast, the shift that would, in time, transform the planet. But in the Archean, it was only a whisper, a hint of the future. Imagine floating at the surface of an Archean sea, looking around you. The water is greenish-brown, thick with minerals. To your left, a mat of microbes forms a slick film, stretching across the shallows. If you could look closely, you would see them working, absorbing light, splitting water, releasing oxygen. Tiny bubbles rise, invisible to your eyes but real nonetheless. And as the sun sets, the process slows, only to begin again with the dawn. Day after day, century after century, these microbes continued. They asked for nothing, sought nothing, only performed their quiet task. And yet, their persistence rewrote the chemistry of the entire world. It is humbling to reflect on this. That world-changing transformations may come not from sudden explosions, but from small, repeated acts. That patience, multiplied across time, can alter the destiny of a planet. Perhaps you think of your own days, the small repetitions that seem to carry little weight. The Archean reminds us that such repetitions may be the very things that shape futures. That consistency is its own kind of revolution. Meanwhile, the continents continued their wandering dance. Each collision raised mountain arcs, each separation opened new oceans. These proto-continents were smaller than ours, their shapes strange and unstable. They carried few records forward, for the earth recycled them often, drawing them back into the mantle. But here and there, fragments survived, shielded by chance, preserved in cratons we can still touch today. These fragments are the bones of the Archean, enduring through 4 billion years of change. If you were to walk on one of these early landmasses, you might find pools of water collecting in cracks, warmed by volcanic heat. Their surfaces shimmer with a rainbow film of organic molecules, thin but persistent. Each pool is an experiment, molecules assembling and breaking, some chains surviving longer than others. Each drying cycle forces concentration. Each rainfall dilutes again. And through these endless cycles, the possibility of life deepens. It is strange to think that life might not have a single birthplace. Perhaps it began in vents deep in the sea, and also in shallow pools on land. Perhaps it emerged in more than one place, more than one way, and over time, these beginnings merged into one living web. If so, then the story of life is not of a single origin, but of many whispers converging into one song. Above it all, the sky remained thick, its colors strange. Imagine looking upward at noon and seeing not a clear blue but a hazy orange, perhaps tinged with violet depending on the mixture of gases. The sun glows faintly, weaker than we know it, its warmth scattered by methane clouds. At night, the stars emerge through gaps in the haze, but their constellations are unfamiliar, shifted by billions of years of movement. The moon, massive and close, dominates the night, pulling the seas with immense force. Its cycles shape the very rhythm of Earth's days. And as days passed, the planet's spin gradually slowed, stretched by the pull of the moon. Where days were once 15 or 16 hours, they lengthened over millions of years. Time itself seemed to expand, giving the earth longer breaths, deeper rhythms. Even the length of a day was not fixed, but part of the planet's slow evolution. All of this reminds us that nothing is permanent. Even the measures we take for granted, day and night, land and sea, sky and air, are temporary, shifting, evolving. The Archean whispers that change is not the exception but the rule. Perhaps, as you let this thought drift through you, you notice how even in your own life, change is constant. What feels solid now may be fluid tomorrow. What feels eternal may, in truth, be only a moment in a larger cycle. And yet, within that change, life continues, just as it did in the Archean. Now picture again the microbial mats of a shallow bay. You watch as layer after layer builds, each new generation living atop the last, turning sunlight into energy, releasing oxygen into the sea. Slowly a dome begins to rise, a stromatolite forming. It is not fast, not dramatic, but steady. Over centuries it becomes visible, a small mound in the water. Over millennia it grows larger, a reef of living stone. These stromatolites were the great monuments of the Archean, not carved by hands, not built by intention, but formed by patience itself. They are the earliest structures made by life, and they remain, even now, in quiet corners of the world. To look at one today is to see both the past and the present, to witness continuity across unimaginable time. And so, as you sit with this vision, perhaps you realize that the Archean is not gone. It is still alive, not only in microbes, not only in rocks, but in every breath of oxygen, in every rhythm of tide, in every cycle of patience. It is within you, too, for the cells of your body carry the same ancient energy, the same chemistry, the same persistence that began here. The Archean teaches us this, that beginnings do not need grandeur, that revolutions can be slow, that the smallest lives, repeated billions of times, can shape entire worlds. And tonight, as you drift in this story, perhaps you feel the quiet assurance of that truth. That patience is enough. That persistence is power. That even in silence, the world is always preparing for something more. The Archean earth drifts onward in silence, its oceans restless, its continents unsettled, its skies heavy with haze. And yet in this silence, patterns continue to emerge. If you listen closely with your imagination, you may hear how the planet's rhythms are slowly changing. The oceans, once saturated with iron, begin to shift as oxygen finds its foothold. With each day of sunlight, photosynthetic microbes release more oxygen into the waters. At first the iron absorbs it all, rusting into bands that fall to the seafloor. But as centuries pass and the supply of dissolved iron dwindles, oxygen lingers longer in the water. For the first time, the oceans breathe differently. Imagine drifting across one of these seas as this change unfolds. The water is not clear, but tinged with red where rust has formed, clouds of iron particles slowly settling. Stromatolites rise from the shallows, their domes catching the sun, their mats bubbling faintly with oxygen. Around you, the air is still harsh, methane and carbon dioxide thick in every breath. But beneath the waves, something is shifting. A quiet revolution is underway. This revolution is not without cost. For many microbes, oxygen is poison. It tears apart delicate molecules, disrupts fragile chemistries. Populations collapse in regions where oxygen builds, retreating into anoxic waters or vanishing entirely. But for others, oxygen is an opportunity, a new energy source, a chance to grow in ways never before possible. Out of this quiet conflict emerges the foundation of the future. The Archean reminds us again, change is never kind to all. It brings both endings and beginnings, losses and openings. To survive, it requires flexibility, adaptation, patience. And life in its quiet persistence proves capable of all three. Now let us return to the continents. They are still small, still unstable, but slowly they expand. With each collision, they stitch together larger landmasses. With each eruption, they lay down new rock. Slowly, the first cratons form, thick, stable roots of continental crust that will endure through billions of years. These are the bones of future continents, the foundation upon which forests, rivers and cities will one day rest. Imagine standing on such a craton. The land beneath your feet is ancient, its roots stretching deep into the mantle. Around you, rivers cut valleys through black rock, carrying minerals to the sea. Rain falls often, filling shallow basins, evaporating under the sun, leaving behind salt and crystals. Lightning flashes, igniting storms that roll across the barren land. Though no trees rise here, no grasses bend in the wind, the land is alive with elemental power. And perhaps, in a small pool between rocks, molecules are at work once more. Chains of RNA form and break, some persisting long enough to copy themselves, others dissolving back into the water. Each cycle is small, but multiplied across time, it becomes part of life's great unfolding. Even here, on land that seems barren, the earth experiments. Above, the sky tells its own story. The sun, faint compared to today, is wrapped in a haze of methane clouds. This greenhouse blanket keeps the planet warm, solving the paradox of the faint young sun. At dusk, the horizon glows red, the haze scattering light in unfamiliar colors. At night, the moon rises, massive and close, its reflection rippling across the seas. The stars above are strange, their constellations unrecognizable, for they have shifted in the billions of years since. Yet their light, unchanged, still reaches this young earth as it reaches us now. It is a reminder that time connects everything. The light you see in the sky tonight may be the same that shone upon the Archean seas. The atoms in your body may once have circulated in those oceans. The very rhythms of your breath echo the patience of microbes that learn to survive in that world. The Archean does not feel distant when you see it this way. It feels present, alive within you, alive in every breath, every stone, every drop of water. Perhaps, as you reflect on this, you notice how even now the Archean lingers. In the banded iron rocks mined for steel, in the stromatolites still growing in quiet bays, in the microbes that live in anoxic mud or at hydrothermal vents, unchanged for billions of years. The Archean is not gone. It lives alongside us, hidden in plain sight, and yet in its own time the Archean was moving toward its end. Slowly, oxygen accumulated. Slowly, continents stabilized. Slowly, the earth prepared for transformation. The Archean was never final, it was a beginning, a long, patient prologue to what would follow. If you close your eyes now and imagine the last days of the Archean, you might see a shoreline at dusk. The tide pulls back, leaving pools on the basalt rocks. In the shallows, stromatolites rise, catching the last light of the fading sun. Above, the sky glows orange, the moon vast against the horizon. The air is heavy with methane, the water tinged with rust. And yet beneath the waves, oxygen builds quietly, a force waiting to remake the world. It is a moment of balance, old ways still strong, new ways rising slowly, the world suspended between two eras. Perhaps you recognize this balance in your own life. Moments where the old has not yet vanished, and the new has not yet arrived. Times when you live between stories, neither ending nor beginning, but both. The Archean whispers that such moments are not empty, they are fertile. They are the thresholds where transformation gathers strength. And so, as you drift in this story tonight, let yourself linger on that threshold. The world around you quiets. The Archean earth stretches in silence. Oceans breathe faint oxygen, continents grow roots. The sky holds both haze and light, and all of it together prepares for what is to come. The earth dreams still. And we, within its dream, continue to drift. Imagine now that millions of years slip by in silence, as though you are watching the Archean unfold in time-lapse. Continents grow slightly larger, their roots sinking deeper into the mantle. Oceans breathe faint whispers of oxygen, layer after layer of iron falling to the seafloor. Microbes divide endlessly, their populations rising and collapsing in cycles that stretch beyond comprehension. To watch the Archean this way is to watch patience itself. The stromatolites stand as monuments to that patience. Picture a shallow bay, warm and mineral-rich, its waters stirred by powerful tides. Within it, dome-shaped mounds grow slowly upward, their surfaces slick with microbial films. With each tide, sediment is trapped, each layer forming a foundation for the next. Day by day, generation by generation, these structures thicken. To us, their growth is invisible, but across centuries they rise, silent cathedrals built not by intention but by persistence. To kneel beside one of these stromatolites is to touch both past and future. They are ancient beyond imagining, yet they still exist in a few corners of our world. In them, the Archean whispers directly, reminding us that life's earliest forms were not fleeting experiments but enduring presences. Yet the Archean was not only calm. Its heart was fire. Volcanoes rose endlessly, their eruptions reshaping the land, their ash darkening skies, their lava carving new plains of rock. The earth was still warm from its formation, its interior restless with energy. Every eruption fed the air with gases, carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur. These gases thickened the atmosphere, holding warmth beneath a faint sun, ensuring the seas remained liquid. Without this, the planet might have frozen under the weaker sunlight. So paradoxically, the violence of volcanoes sustained the gentleness of oceans. Fire preserved water. Destruction sustained life. The Archean shows us again that opposites are not enemies but partners. That creation often hides within destruction, and survival often emerges from chaos. If you imagine standing on such a volcanic shore, the sky is hazy, tinted red by ash. Rivers of lava pour down into the ocean, hissing as they meet the waves. Steam rises in vast clouds, spreading across the horizon. Lightning flashes within the storm, striking the seas. Each strike provides energy, sparking new molecules into being. Even here, amidst fire and storm, the earth is experimenting, offering chances for chemistry to shift toward life. And beneath the seas, the vent communities thrive. Imagine drifting near one of these vents, where superheated water gushes from the crust. Around it, microbes gather, feeding on sulfur and minerals. Over time, some colonies become more complex, finding new ways to survive, building alliances with one another. The Archean may seem static, but here, evolution hums quietly, shaping the paths that will one day lead to complexity. Above, the moon continues its immense pull. Its closeness makes tides violent, surging across coasts, reshaping land and sea. Days remain short, barely 16 hours, but they lengthen slowly as the moon's pull slows Earth's rotation. Even time itself is changing, stretching, deepening. Perhaps you pause here, reflecting on how even the length of a day is not permanent. That what we consider fixed is only part of a larger rhythm. The Archean reminds us that stability is always temporary, that even time itself flows in cycles. Now let us return to oxygen, the quiet revolution building beneath the waves. Each stromatolite, each mat of microbes, releases bubbles into the water. Most of that oxygen is consumed, rusting iron, reacting with gases, vanishing as quickly as it forms. But slowly, as iron is depleted, oxygen begins to linger. In some regions, it builds enough to change the chemistry of the seas. For many microbes, this is deadly. For others, it is liberation. They learn to harness oxygen for energy, unlocking new possibilities. This slow spread of oxygen is one of the most profound transformations in Earth's history. But during the Archean, it is still only a whisper. The skies remain hazy with methane, the air still hostile to us. The full oxygenation of the atmosphere will come later, in the Proterozoic. But the seeds are already sown, carried in every bubble released from microbial mats. Imagine being there at the edge of such a sea as the first oxygen drifts upward. You breathe, but the air burns your lungs. You look out, and the horizon is rust-colored where iron has fallen from the water. And yet, though invisible to your eyes, the chemistry of the planet is shifting, slowly preparing for a new kind of world. This is what the Archean offers, a reminder that change is often invisible while it is happening, that revolutions may be whispered long before they are shouted. That preparation may last longer than we can imagine, but it is never wasted. Perhaps, as you rest with this thought, you think of your own unseen changes. Habits repeated, efforts unnoticed, seeds planted in silence. The Archean suggests that these may be the most powerful of all. That what you do quietly, persistently, may one day shape a future you cannot yet imagine. Now, let us travel again across time. Imagine millions of years passing as easily as breaths. Continents shift, their collisions raising new mountains. Oceans swell and contract. Microbes adapt, stromatolites rise, iron falls. Over and over, the cycles repeat, each one leaving its trace in stone. And though nothing yet resembles the world we know, everything we know is being prepared. To dwell in the Archean is to live in a prologue, a story not yet told but gathering strength. It is to rest in patience, to trust that what unfolds slowly is still moving, still alive. It is to understand that silence can be fertile, that invisibility can be powerful, that beginnings do not always look like beginnings. Perhaps tonight, as you drift deeper into rest, you carry this whisper with you. That patience itself is alive. That change may come slowly, but it always comes. That even in silence the world dreams forward. The Archean was not empty. It was the slow heartbeat of life, steady, quiet, enduring. As the Archean continues, you may begin to feel the sense of weight it carries. Not the weight of mountains, nor of oceans, but of time itself. Billions of years stretch across this eon, each day passing with no witness but the earth and its microbes. To imagine it is to feel how vast patience can be. The seas remain the heart of this world, iron-rich, restless, drawn by tides under the pull of a massive moon. Across their surface, stromatolites spread in shallow bays, dome by dome, layer by layer. Within them, colonies of microbes labor silently, drawing sunlight, releasing oxygen, changing the chemistry of the oceans. These are not dramatic acts, not sudden transformations. They are repetitions, millions upon millions of them. And yet, in repetition, entire worlds are altered. Imagine hovering above such a bay, the sun faint in a hazy sky. The water is green-brown, heavy with particles. Stromatolites rise like small islands, their surfaces slick with life. Oxygen bubbles slip from them, rising invisibly, reacting with the iron in the water, rusting it into particles that fall to the seafloor. Slowly the bottom is layered with iron and silica, band upon band, a record of oxygen's whispers. To see this is to see time itself written in stone. Each band is not a year, not a century, but a million-year chapter in Earth's diary. To hold one today is to touch the memory of oceans that breathed before there were animals, before there were even plants. And yet the oceans are not calm. Storms rage across their surface, driven by thick atmospheres and volatile climates. Lightning strikes, waves crash, winds roar. The Archean Sea is not peaceful in sound, but in purpose. Beneath the chaos, life continues steadily, undisturbed by surface violence. For microbes, the storm above means little. They endure, as they always have, in cycles too deep to be broken by weather. Perhaps you notice this truth, that endurance often hides beneath noise. That while storms rage above, stability can persist below. That what appears chaotic on the surface may conceal deep continuity. The Archean teaches us to look beyond the storm, to the rhythm beneath. Now let us shift to the continents again. By this time, they are slowly becoming more stable. Thick roots of cratons stretch deep into the mantle, anchoring land that will last for billions of years. These cratons are the seeds of modern continents, their rocks still surviving today in Greenland, Canada, and Australia. To touch such a rock is to touch the Archean directly, to hold the bones of Earth's first stable land. Imagine walking across such a landmass. The surface is barren, no trees, no grasses, not even moss. Rivers cut channels into black stone, carrying minerals toward the sea. Rain falls acidic, dissolving the rock, feeding the cycle of erosion. Volcanoes rise and collapse, their ash feeding the soil that no plants yet claim. The land is lonely, raw, unsoftened by life. And yet, it too is part of the preparation. It is building the foundations of continents that will one day cradle forests, mountains, and civilizations. Above, the sky is still heavy with methane and carbon dioxide, its colors strange. Some days the haze is thick, the sun dim and red. Other days the air clears slightly, revealing a fainter sun, its light pale but steady. At night, the moon dominates, pulling the seas, stretching the crust, lengthening the days slowly over eons. Even time itself feels pliable, reshaped by the pull of celestial bodies. It is humbling to realize that the earth was not fixed, not static, even in these basics. That the length of a day, the size of continents, the chemistry of the seas, all of it was fluid, shifting, evolving. Perhaps you feel a reflection of this in your own life. That what feels permanent is often only temporary. That even the most solid-seeming realities are always changing. And yet, within this change, there is continuity. Microbes continue dividing. Stromatolites continue layering. Oxygen continues rising, little by little. The Archean whispers that endurance is not about resisting change, but about continuing within it. Now picture again the deep-sea vents, where superheated water gushes from the crust. Around them, colonies thrive, feeding on sulfur, iron, and carbon dioxide. These microbes are ancestors of life that still lives today in the ocean's depths. To visit such a vent now is to see the Archean alive, unchanged by billions of years. Their persistence is a reminder that the past is never entirely gone. Perhaps you imagine drifting in that deep ocean, near the vents. The water is dark, except for the faint glow of minerals. The heat brushes against you as plumes rise. Around you, colonies shimmer faintly, their filaments weaving together in mats. They are small, fragile, invisible to our eyes, and yet they hold within them the endurance of the entire planet. It is here, in these depths, that life may have begun. Or perhaps in shallow pools, or perhaps both. The truth remains uncertain, and perhaps it always will. But what matters is not the exact birthplace, but the persistence that followed. Once begun, life did not end. It adapted, it survived, it continued. That is the Archean's true legacy. And as oxygen continues to whisper into the seas, the stage is being set for transformation. Slowly, the balance shifts. Slowly, the planet prepares for the great oxidation that will come in the Proterozoic. The Archean does not yet know this future, but it is preparing for it in every bubble, every rusting layer, every stromatolite mound. To live in the Archean was to live within preparation, to be patient without knowing why, to endure without knowing what would follow. And perhaps this is its greatest teaching, that we do not always need to see the outcome to trust the process. That patience itself is a kind of faith. So, as you rest with this vision tonight, perhaps you carry that faith with you. That even if the path is unseen, something is always unfolding. That even in silence, change is alive. That endurance itself can be the most profound act. The Archean stretches on, billions of years long, and yet within it, the seeds of all futures are planted. The oceans breathe, the continents root, the skies shift, the microbes persist. And through it all, the earth dreams forward. If you listen carefully to the Archean earth, You may hear how it speaks not only through what is present, but through what is absent. No rustle of leaves, no calls of animals, no footsteps across soil. The silence is vast, and yet it is not empty. For within that silence, the world is alive with processes too subtle for ears, too patient for eyes. Consider the skies once more. The Archean atmosphere was thick with methane, carbon dioxide, and water vapor, but oxygen remained scarce. This meant no protective ozone layer, no familiar blue canopy. Instead, the heavens may have seemed hazy, tinted orange or red. When storms gathered, lightning cut through the haze, igniting violent downpours. When the air cleared, the sun shone faintly, weaker than today but still enough to warm oceans held beneath their greenhouse blanket. At night, the sky was another kind of spectacle. The moon rose enormous, close enough to pull tides like great hands across the oceans. Stars pierced the haze in patterns alien to our modern constellations. Meteors streaked across the heavens, remnants of the cosmic debris still wandering near Earth. The silence of life's absence was filled instead by the raw beauty of fire, water, air, and stone. Now imagine standing on a shoreline during such a night. The tide pulls back far, exposing rocks slick with microbial mats. Pools form in the depressions, their surfaces shimmering with films of organic molecules. Above, the moon glows immense, its light bending across the waves. You breathe the thick air, sulfur and iron sharp in the lungs, and know that this world would not welcome you. And yet for microbes it is paradise. In those shallow pools, cycles unfold endlessly. By day, the sun warms them, evaporating the water, concentrating the molecules inside. Chains form, break, and reform. By night, the tide returns, replenishing the pools, carrying away what has dissolved, leaving behind what endures. Each cycle is a new chance for complexity to take hold. It is strange to realize that the same tides that rise and fall around us today were once the very forces that shaped life's beginnings. The moon, closer and brighter, sculpted not only the seas, but the conditions that made persistence possible. Even the pull of a satellite became part of the story of life. Deeper in the oceans, vent communities continued their work. Superheated water gushed from fissures in the seafloor, mixing with cold ocean currents. Around these plumes, microbes clung to rock, feeding on minerals, weaving thin mats. Some formed partnerships, exchanging resources, stabilizing their tiny ecosystems. These early experiments in cooperation foreshadow the complexity of all future life. For even at the beginning, survival was rarely solitary. Above these hidden colonies, oxygen slowly gathered in the seas. It poisoned some, empowered others. It rusted iron, fell to the seafloor, left its traces in stone. The oceans became a theater of invisible change, each chemical reaction a rehearsal for the future. To us, it would have looked the same day after day. To the earth, it was transformation. Perhaps, as you drift with this image, you recognize a quiet truth. That change is often imperceptible in the moment. That revolutions can happen in silence, invisible until they have already remade the world. The Archean teaches patience in this, reminding us that unseen progress is progress still. The continents, too, were whispering toward stability. Cratons thickened, their roots anchoring deep into the mantle. Volcanic arcs collided, forming larger landmasses that endured longer than before. Rivers carved valleys, carrying nutrients to the sea. Rain wore mountains down. Each cycle of erosion and rebuilding slowly taught the earth how to sustain land. Picture yourself walking across such a craton. The air is heavy, the ground dark with basalt. Pools shimmer in cracks, steaming where heat rises from below. Far away, a volcano glows, its lava spilling down toward the ocean. Around you, no plants, no trees, no soil softened by roots. Only raw stone, jagged and sharp, wearing slowly beneath rain. The silence of the land is immense, broken only by wind and the hiss of steam. Yet even here, life may linger in small pools, in mats near the shore, in colonies hidden from sight. It is humbling to realize that the land we now take for granted, the stable continents beneath our homes, was once fragile, fleeting, uncertain. That the ground beneath us is the product of billions of years of collision, erosion, and persistence. The Archean whispers again, nothing is given quickly. Stability is earned through time, and yet, even within that patience, the seeds of transformation continued to grow. Oxygen built slowly in the seas. Stromatolites multiplied in bays, layering their domes higher. Vent communities adapted, expanded, endured. Each repetition laid another stone in the foundation of the future. Perhaps you can feel this truth echo in your own life. That repetition is not wasted. That steady effort, though invisible, builds foundations. That persistence itself creates stability. Now imagine the Archean at dawn. The sun rises pale behind a haze of methane. The tide has retreated, leaving stromatolites exposed in the shallows. Dew collects on black stone, glimmering faintly before vanishing in heat. The air is sharp with sulfur, and yet beneath the surface of the water, bubbles of oxygen rise, invisible but world-changing. It is a quiet dawn, a dawn no creatures yet see, but a dawn that belongs to all futures. The Archean was not empty, it was expectation. A world holding its breath, slowly filling with the possibility of what was to come. And so, as you let yourself drift with this image, perhaps you carry its patience into your own stillness. That you, too, are always in preparation. That silence is not emptiness but possibility. That unseen changes are shaping what lies ahead. The earth dreamed slowly in the Archean, and within its dream the future gathered strength. As we drift further into the Archean, the sense of scale becomes overwhelming. Billions of years stretch out, so long that entire mountain ranges could rise and erode away without ever being noticed in the span of the eon. To live in that time would be to live in a patience we can hardly comprehend. Yet within that patience, the first patterns of the living world continued to deepen. The oceans, still vast and iron-rich, were the heart of the story. Imagine gazing across their surface on a dim afternoon. The sun, filtered through a haze of methane, casts a muted glow on waters that shift between green and brown. Waves rise and fall under the pull of a close moon, stronger and faster than tides today. To our eyes, the water would appear strange, dense with minerals, but to microbes, it was a canvas of abundance. Beneath the surface, mats of life spread across rocks. Some clung to the shallow bays, building stromatolites layer by layer. Others floated freely, drifting with currents, catching sunlight. Still others thrived near hydrothermal vents, feeding on sulfur and iron in the deep. Together, they formed a web of existence as complete as any modern ecosystem, though invisible to our eyes. Perhaps you imagine yourself shrinking small enough to see one of these colonies. Filaments stretch outward, weaving into networks. Tiny bubbles collect, released as waste yet destined to transform oceans. Cells divide slowly, passing on strands of information coded in molecules. To you it looks delicate, fragile, and yet it has endured longer than empires, longer than mountains, longer even than continents. Above, the continents themselves were learning endurance. Their roots thickened, their surfaces cooled, their collisions stitched together larger cratons. Though barren and silent, they were preparing to support forests, rivers, and creatures far beyond imagination. To see them now is to see bare foundations, but to know them is to understand that every future landscape was already contained in their slow assembly. If you walk across such a landmass in your imagination, you find basalt plains stretching to the horizon. Rivers rush through sharp valleys, their waters brown with dissolved minerals. Steam rises from fissures where heat escapes. Rain falls in heavy sheets, wearing the rock down, feeding the sea. The silence is vast, unbroken by birds or insects. And yet every drop of water, every grain of mineral, every crack in the stone contributes to life's story. Above, the sky glows orange red at dusk, methane scattering the fading sunlight. The stars emerge slowly, alien in their patterns, for the constellations we know did not yet exist. And then the moon rises immense, dominating the night. Its reflection ripples across the iron-stained water, a beacon of tides, pulling at the very crust of the earth. Perhaps you pause here, looking out over this imagined scene. It feels lonely, empty, and yet you know that beneath the surface, life is thriving in ways too small to see. That silence does not mean absence. That patience does not mean stillness. This is one of the Archean's quiet teachings, that much of existence unfolds beyond our senses. That what we cannot see may be the very thing shaping our future. Oxygen was invisible, but it transformed the planet. Microbes were unseen, but they laid the foundation of all biology. Time itself is intangible, yet it moves mountains and oceans. And perhaps you reflect on your own life, that much of what shapes it unfolds beyond sight. That unseen efforts, invisible patience, subtle shifts may be building futures quietly, just as they did in the Archean. Now let us return to the oceans once more. Oxygen is building slowly, though still trapped mostly in water. Each bubble reacts with iron, forming rust that sinks to the seafloor. Band upon band of iron forms, pressing into stone, a record of cycles across millions of years. To hold such a rock today is to hold not only iron but memory, the memory of oceans breathing before the world was ready for air. The accumulation of oxygen is not only chemistry, it is destiny. It is the slow preparation for the great oxidation that will come in the next eon. The Archean itself does not see it, does not know it, but in every stromatolite, in every microbial mat, the future is being prepared. It is humbling to think that the entire biosphere rests upon such fragile acts, that bubbles rising from unseen colonies could change the fate of a planet. That repetition itself could be world-altering. Perhaps you sense the reflection of this in your own rhythms. That daily breaths, daily steps, daily repetitions, though small, may carry futures you cannot yet see. The Archean whispers that persistence is its own kind of creation. Now picture the Archean Earth as seen from space. A planet half-shrouded in haze, its oceans vast and dark, its continents small and scattered, its volcanoes glowing faintly along the coasts. The moon looms close, circling quickly, its pull visible in the tides. From a distance the earth looks restless, young, unsettled. But within its oceans, life is already shaping the atmosphere, already preparing the surface, already writing the first chapters of biology. It is a reminder that appearances can deceive, that a world that looks barren may be fertile beneath, that what seems empty may be overflowing with unseen activity. The Archean teaches us not to measure by what is visible, but by what is alive. And so, as we pause at this midpoint of its story, perhaps you let yourself feel the patience of that world settling into you. The oceans breathing slowly, the continents rooting deeply, the skies holding their haze, the microbes dividing in silence, the earth preparing without hurry, without haste. Perhaps you too can rest in that patience, that you need not see the outcome to trust the unfolding, that even in silence something is always becoming. The Archean was not empty. It was promise stretched across billions of years, and within that promise all of life slept, waiting to awaken. If you close your eyes and drift further into the Archean, you may begin to notice how the world feels both immense and intimate. Immense in its scale, oceans without end, skies heavy with haze, time stretching across billions of years. Intimate in its details, bubbles of oxygen rising unseen, microbes weaving silent mats, rainwater collecting in pools that shimmer faintly in the weak sun. The Archean is a paradox of scale, where the smallest events carry the greatest consequences. Consider again the microbes that drew energy from sunlight. To us they are invisible, too small for the naked eye. Yet their work reshaped oceans, shifted atmospheres, altered the destiny of the planet. They released oxygen as waste, never knowing it would one day fill the air, feed forests, power animals, kindle fire. They built stromatolites, layer upon layer, never knowing they were leaving monuments that would outlast mountains. In their silence, they remade the earth. Perhaps you sense the echo of this truth in your own life, that actions need not be large to be lasting. That repetition, patience, and persistence are their own kind of creation. That what you do quietly, without recognition, may ripple outward in ways unseen. The Archean is a mirror of this kind of hidden significance. Meanwhile, the continents continued to grow. Their collisions stitched together larger landmasses, their roots thickened into cratons, their mountains rose and eroded again. Each cycle carved new rivers, created new shorelines, fed the oceans with fresh minerals. Though barren, though silent, the land was essential. Without these roots, future continents could not hold forests or cities. Without these rivers, future seas could not flourish with life. The Archean was laying groundwork not only for its own time, but for all that followed. Imagine walking across such a continent. The ground beneath you is dark with basalt, sharp with fractures. Pools of rainwater gather in cracks, steaming faintly where volcanic heat seeps through. The air is thick with methane, the sky tinted orange. Rivers rush through valleys, their waters carrying iron to the seas. Volcanoes rise in the distance, their lava glowing faintly at night, their plumes feeding the sky with gases. It is a harsh world, unwelcoming to us. Yet in every fissure, every pool, every vent, life persists. And above it all, the moon remains immense, pulling tides with force. Days are still short, their length slowly stretching as the earth spins slows. Each tide reshapes coasts, concentrates molecules, fuels cycles that nurture life's persistence. Even the moon itself is part of the story, shaping the rhythms of oceans, guiding the path of biology. The Archean whispers again, nothing stands alone. Even the pull of the moon, even the faintness of the sun, even the gases of volcanoes, all are part of life's unfolding. The universe itself conspired to make persistence possible. Now let us descend once more into the deep oceans, where hydrothermal vents glow faintly in the dark. Superheated water gushes upward, carrying sulfur and minerals. Around these chimneys, microbial colonies thrive, their metabolisms built not on sunlight but on chemistry. They weave mats that capture energy, recycle resources, sustain entire communities. For billions of years, these vent communities endured, untouched by surface storms, untouched by oxygen's slow rise. Even today, they endure still, reminders of the Archean alive in our own oceans. To imagine drifting through one of these deep-sea gardens is to see the Archean still breathing. The water is dark but alive with unseen activity. Bacteria divide, filaments weave, gases bubble upward. It is a world without sight, without sound, without plants or animals, and yet it hums with persistence. These communities teach us that life is not bound to one path, not dependent on one source. Where there is energy, life finds a way. Perhaps you pause here, reflecting on how adaptable life truly is, that it can thrive without oxygen, without sunlight, without land. That it can endure in boiling water, in frozen ice, in rocks deep underground. The Archean is proof of this resilience, a reminder that existence is not fragile but tenacious. Above the deep oceans, oxygen continued its quiet work. Each stromatolite, each microbial mat contributed to its rise. Slowly, the balance shifted. Iron was consumed, rust fell to the seafloor, and oxygen began to linger. It did not yet fill the skies, but it prepared the way. The Archean was not yet the world of air-breathing life, but it was becoming the foundation of it. Imagine again the shoreline at dusk. The tide retreats, leaving stromatolites glistening in the fading light. The air is sharp with methane, the horizon red with haze. Above, the moon glows, immense and silver, its reflection trembling on the sea. You know that the oxygen rising here is invisible, unnoticed, yet powerful. That in this quiet evening, the future is being written. The Archean is a reminder that futures are not built suddenly. They are layered slowly, like stromatolites, like iron bands, like cratons. They are written in repetitions, in patience, in cycles that unfold beyond the span of our eyes. Perhaps you carry this reflection with you now, that the story of your life, too, may be layered slowly, invisibly, but no less profoundly. That what feels small today may one day be the foundation of something vast. That patience itself is a kind of creation. And so, as we linger in this chapter of the Archean, let us rest in its silence. Oceans heavy with iron, continents learning to endure, microbes dividing endlessly. Skies hazy and strange, a moon immense above the horizon, a sun faint but steady, all of it together, not hurried, not complete, but always becoming. The Archean was not a finished world. It was a world in preparation, and within its patience all of life slept, waiting for its time to awaken. If you let your imagination wander deeper into the Archean, you may begin to sense the quiet layering of stories. Each ocean, each continent, each microbial mat adds another thread, weaving together a tapestry of patience. The Eon itself becomes less like a moment and more like a long breath, drawn in slowly, released slowly, stretching across billions of years. The seas remain the stage upon which most of life's early drama unfolds. Imagine drifting near a shallow coast where stromatolites rise. Their domes are small, some barely more than mounds of sediment bound together by microbes, yet they are alive with silent industry. Light filters through the hazy sky, dim but steady. In response, the microbes within these mounds absorb photons, split water molecules, and release oxygen. The bubbles rise invisibly, reacting with iron, rusting the ocean. Slowly, the water turns reddish-brown, clouded with particles that fall to the seafloor in endless rain. Over millions of years, these particles press into stone. Band upon band of iron forms, red with rust, dark with silica, layered like pages in a book. Each page a chapter of chemistry, each chapter a record of oxygen's whisper. To hold such a rock today is to open the diary of the Archean seas. Now picture leaving the shallows and drifting into the open ocean. The water grows darker, colder. And then, far below, a glow appears, the faint shimmer of hydrothermal vents. These chimneys rise like towers, their plumes spreading like black smoke in the deep. Around them, life thrives without sunlight. Microbes feed on sulfur, iron, and carbon. Colonies weave mats across rocks, recycling minerals, sustaining themselves in the dark. It is here, some believe, that life may have begun. In these mineral-rich gradients, where hot and cold meet, where energy flows freely, molecules may have found their first foothold. The Archean oceans are filled with such places, hidden laboratories where persistence gives rise to possibility. Above these depths, the continents are slowly becoming more stable. Cratons thicken, anchoring themselves deep into the mantle. Their surfaces are barren, black with basalt, scarred by eruptions. Rivers rush across them, carrying minerals to the seas. Rain falls often, acidic and warm, wearing down mountains as quickly as they rise. To stand on such a continent would be to stand on a land still in rehearsal, still learning how to endure. And above it all, the skies remain strange. Heavy with methane, tinted orange or red, the atmosphere filters the faint sun. Lightning splits the air, often igniting storms that rage across oceans. Each strike delivers energy, sparking reactions in pools and seas, fueling the chemistry of life. Even storms, even violence, contribute to the slow unfolding of possibility. Perhaps you pause to reflect on this truth, that even chaos can be fertile. That what seems destructive may in fact be part of creation. The Archean teaches us that the boundary between ruin and renewal is thin, and often invisible until time has passed. Now imagine the Archean Earth as seen from above, drifting in the darkness of space. Clouds swirl over oceans that stretch almost without interruption. Small landmasses dot the surface, glowing faintly with volcanic fire. The moon orbits close, pulling tides in immense waves, shaping the rhythms of the planet. From a distance, the Earth appears restless, unsettled but alive. Within it, microbes stir invisibly, already altering the air, already shaping the surface, already preparing a world for futures it cannot yet imagine. It is humbling to realize that everything we know, forests, rivers, animals, people, was contained within this fragile beginning. That the Archean, silent and microbial, carried within it all that would follow. Perhaps you reflect on how this mirrors your own life. That within beginnings that seem small or invisible, futures beyond imagination may already be forming. That patience is not emptiness, but preparation. The Archean stretched across 2 billion years. In that time, life remained microbial. No fish, no plants, no animals. And yet the oceans breathed slowly, filling with oxygen. The continents rooted, forming stable cratons. The cycles of erosion, deposition, and renewal continued without pause. And through it all, life endured, adapted, and persisted. To sit with the Archean is to sit with the long view of time. It asks us to step beyond the urgency of moments, beyond the span of days or years, and to rest in the knowledge that transformation often takes longer than we can see. That patience itself is part of creation. Perhaps tonight, as you drift deeper into rest, you carry that knowledge with you. That unseen change is no less real. That the slow unfolding of your own story is part of something greater. That silence itself can be fertile ground. The Archean whispers still. In stromatolites that rise layer by layer, in rocks that bear iron's rust, in microbes that endure in the deep, in every breath of oxygen you take, born from bubbles released billions of years ago. It whispers that the earth is patient, that life is patient, that you too can be patient. And so, as we pause here in the Archean, let us breathe with its tides. The oceans heavy and restless, the continents learning to stand, the skies hazy and strange, the microbes persisting in silence, the moon immense pulling time itself forward. All of it together, not hurried, not finished, but always becoming. Imagine now that you are standing on the edge of one of those ancient cratons, a proto-continent jutting into the Archean Sea. The air is heavy, dense with methane, tinged with sulfur. The sky above glows a dull orange, the sun faint behind haze. Beneath your feet the rock is dark and sharp, freshly formed from cooling lava. Around you the land is barren. No plants, no roots, no soil, only stone and pools of rainwater collecting in shallow cracks. The tide is pulling back, drawn far out by a moon that looms impossibly large on the horizon. In the pools left behind, you notice films shimmering on the surface, rainbows of organic molecules glistening in the fading light. If you lean close, you may see bubbles forming, bursting softly into the air. These pools are laboratories, places where molecules meet and part, where chemistry rehearses the shapes of life. Each cycle of drying and refilling pushes molecules into new arrangements. Some break apart, others hold together, a few replicate themselves. Imperfect copies, but enough to continue. And though the process seems fragile, over millions of years it builds resilience. From chance and persistence, complexity begins. Now let us leave the pools and look outward across the sea. The water is dark with iron, its surface restless, waves crashing against the basalt shore. In the distance, dome-shaped stromatolites rise from the shallows, layered by microbial colonies that feed on sunlight. Their surfaces glisten in the dim glow, releasing oxygen into the water. Each bubble rises unseen, but together they are rewriting the ocean. Slowly, rust forms, falls, and settles in layers that will become stone. The sea is heavy with transformation, though it appears unchanged to the eye. Beneath, the story deepens. Hydrothermal vents glow in the darkness of the deep ocean, their plumes rich with minerals. Microbial colonies cluster around them, thriving on sulfur and heat. To drift near one of these vents is to witness resilience in its purest form, life thriving in extremes, feeding on what seems inhospitable, enduring where we could not. It is here that we glimpse one of the Archean's most profound lessons, that life does not require what we require. It does not need air or soil or sunlight. It needs only the possibility of energy. Where energy flows, life follows. Perhaps you reflect on this truth as it echoes within your own story. That survival does not always demand abundance, but adaptation. That resilience comes not from comfort, but from the ability to draw strength from what is present. The Archean Earth, seen from above, would appear restless. Oceans cover most of the surface, vast and dark, broken by small landmasses glowing faintly with volcanic fire. Clouds of methane swirl above, tinted orange and red. The moon orbits close, pulling tides like great hands across the planet. It is a young world, unsettled but alive in its own strange way. And yet, despite its strangeness, there is a beauty here, a beauty not of forests or rivers but of patience. The slow building of stromatolites, the quiet layering of iron in stone, the persistence of microbes dividing unseen. It is a beauty of endurance, of repetition, of unseen progress. Perhaps you imagine sitting quietly on that shoreline, listening. The crash of waves against rock, the hiss of steam from volcanic vents, the rumble of distant eruptions. The silence of a world without voices, broken only by the music of the elements. To sit there is to feel small, but also to feel connected. For within you, too, the Archean endures, in every cell, in every breath of oxygen, in every strand of DNA. The Eon was long, unimaginably long. More than 2 billion years passed this way. Life remained microbial, oxygen remained scarce, continents remained small. And yet in all that time nothing stopped. Change was constant, even when invisible. Oxygen accumulated slowly, cratons stabilized gradually, microbes adapted endlessly. The patience of the Archean was not stagnation. It was preparation, and that preparation carried the seeds of everything that followed. When oxygen finally did rise into the skies, when continents grew vast and stable, when complexity blossomed, it was only possible because of the long endurance of the Archean. Without patience there could be no future. Perhaps you carry this reflection with you now, that your own life too is shaped by preparation. That unseen persistence, even across long stretches of silence, is never wasted. That patience itself is fertile ground. As the Archean moved toward its close, oxygen levels continued to whisper upward. Stromatolites spread, vent communities endured, cratons anchored themselves deep into the mantle. The Earth was gathering strength for transformation, but for now the world remained microbial, quiet, patient. Imagine again that shoreline at dusk. The tide retreats, leaving stromatolites glistening in the fading light. The air is sharp with methane, the sky red with haze. The moon rises immense, casting silver across the sea. Beneath the surface, oxygen builds invisibly. The world seems still, but it is preparing, always preparing. The Archean whispers this truth, that beginnings are often long. That change may take longer than we can see. That patience itself is the shape of creation. And so, as you drift with this vision tonight, perhaps you feel that patience settle within you. That you too are always becoming, even in silence. That the tides of your own life, unseen but steady, are carrying you forward. As we continue drifting through the Archean, it is worth pausing to notice how much of this eon unfolded beyond perception. To stand upon its shores, to watch its oceans, to look upon its skies, you might think nothing was happening. No forests rising, no creatures moving, no voices calling across the wind. And yet beneath that stillness, everything was happening. The greatest transformations are often the ones that hide in silence. Imagine again the Archean seas, vast and restless. Their waters are heavy with iron, their colors shifting with light, green one moment, red the next. Across the shallows, stromatolites cluster like low reefs, their domes slick with microbial mats. Within them, cells divide endlessly, harvesting sunlight, releasing oxygen. The oxygen slips into the water, bubbles rising invisibly, rusting iron, falling in layers to the seafloor. It is a process so small you would never notice it with your eyes, and yet it is rewriting the chemistry of the planet. Now sink deeper into the oceans below. The light fades, replaced by darkness, and then in the gloom a faint glow appears, the shimmering plumes of hydrothermal vents. Around them, microbes gather, feeding on sulfur and minerals, weaving thin mats across the rocks. Their metabolisms are alien to us, yet perfectly suited to this world. They endure heat and pressure that would crush us, yet to them, it is simply home. These vent communities remind us of resilience, the ability to thrive not in ideal conditions, but in whatever conditions are given. Life does not wait for perfection. It makes use of what is present, weaving existence from what others might call inhospitable. The Archean whispers this truth quietly, that resilience is not resistance but adaptation. Above, the continents continued their slow growth. Though still small, their roots deepened, anchoring them against the mantle. Volcanic arcs collided, stitching together larger landmasses. Mountains rose, only to be worn away by rains that fell endlessly, carrying their minerals to the sea. Rivers cut channels through black basalt, carving valleys that no trees softened, no grasses covered. The land was raw, sharp, unfinished, but each erosion, each river, each collapse was part of the preparation. To walk across such a landmass is to feel its restlessness. Steam rises from fissures. Pools shimmer with rainwater, their surfaces coated with films of organic molecules. The air is sharp with sulfur, the ground scarred by eruptions. No birds fly here, no insects hum, only the wind and the hiss of steam. And yet in the cracks and pools life stirs, molecules divide, chains lengthen. The same patience that fills the oceans fills the land as well. Above it all, the sky remains strange. At noon, the sun glows faintly behind a haze of methane. At dusk, the horizon burns orange-red, scattering light through the thick atmosphere. At night, the moon rises immense, its tides reshaping the seas. The stars appear, though their constellations are foreign. And from time to time, meteors streak across the heavens, reminders that the cosmos beyond is never still. The Archean Earth seen from space would look unsettled, its surface covered in dark seas, dotted with small volcanic landmasses, wrapped in haze. To us it might appear barren, but within it was already alive, already building, already preparing. What looks empty often conceals abundance. Perhaps you reflect on this as you rest tonight, that what feels still in your life may in fact be filled with unseen change. That silence does not mean nothing is happening. That patience is often the shape of becoming, and so the Archean stretched on, age after age, longer than we can imagine. Microbes divided, stromatolites grew. Iron rusted and fell. Oxygen whispered slowly into the seas. Continents thickened, rivers flowed, storms raged, lightning struck. Each cycle repeated endlessly, yet each repetition carried the world forward. This is another of the Archean's quiet teachings, that progress does not always look like motion. Sometimes it looks like repetition, the same cycles, again and again, until change emerges so slowly that it feels sudden only in hindsight. Imagine now a shoreline at dawn. The tide has pulled back, exposing stromatolites glistening in the dim light. The air is heavy, tinted red by haze. The sun rises pale, its warmth faint but steady. Pools left behind by the tide shimmer with films of molecules, their surfaces alive with possibility. The waves return slowly, washing over the shore, carrying the molecules back into the sea. The cycle begins again. It has begun again for millions of years, and it will continue still. To us, it may feel endless. To the earth, it is patience. And from that patience, futures will come. Perhaps you carry this truth with you as you drift deeper into rest, that repetition is not futility, but foundation. That the Archean itself was one long repetition, and yet from it came all of life. If we linger near the end of the Archean, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of change. The Eon stretches behind us, billions of years long, filled with microbial patience, iron seas, volcanic land, and skies veiled in haze. Ahead lies the Proterozoic, when oxygen will rise into the atmosphere, when the Earth will shift into a new chapter. But here, in this moment of transition, the Archean is still itself, quiet, patient, unfinished. The seas remain vast, restless, iron-rich. Stromatolites continue their work in shallow bays, building layer upon layer, releasing oxygen into the water. The oxygen reacts with iron, rusting it, falling to the seafloor, leaving behind banded iron formations that press slowly into stone. The process is unchanged, as steady as the tides, and yet the balance is shifting. Oxygen is beginning to linger longer in the water, no longer consumed entirely by iron. It is the faintest beginning of something new. Imagine floating in such a sea. The water is tinged red, heavy with rust particles. Beneath you, microbial mats shimmer faintly in the light, their filaments weaving together, their bubbles rising invisibly. Around you, the air above is thick with methane, the sky tinted orange. The sun glows faintly through the haze. To your senses, it feels still, eternal. But in truth, the chemistry is changing, slowly but profoundly. Perhaps you pause here to reflect on how often change hides within stillness. That revolutions are not always sudden, but often begin as whispers, invisible until their effects spread across everything. The Archean is filled with such whispers, oxygen rising slowly, continents thickening quietly, microbes adapting patiently. Now let us walk again across the continents. They are larger now, more stable than in the earliest days, their cratons rooted deeply in the mantle. Rivers cut valleys across their surfaces, carrying minerals to the seas. Volcanoes still rise and collapse, their eruptions feeding the atmosphere with carbon dioxide and sulfur. Rain falls often, wearing the land down, feeding the endless cycle of erosion and renewal. The land remains barren, no trees, no grasses, no soil, but it is stronger now, more enduring, preparing for what will come. To stand here is to feel both rawness and permanence. The ground is black with basalt, scarred by fissures, but beneath its roots are strong. These cratons will endure for billions of years, carrying forward into our own time. To touch them today is to touch the Archean directly, to place your hand on the bones of the Earth's first true continents. Above, the sky continues to tell its strange story. At dusk, the haze glows red, scattering light through methane clouds. At night, the moon rises immense, pulling tides across the oceans with power. The stars are unfamiliar, their constellations shifted, but their light is the same, reaching across time to touch both then and now. From time to time, meteors streak across the sky, reminders that the cosmos beyond is never still. Perhaps you imagine standing on that shoreline at night, the tide pulling back, the moon glowing vast, the stars scattered above. You hear only the crash of waves, the hiss of steam from fissures, the rumble of distant volcanoes. No voices, no wings, no footsteps. Only the elements composing their own music. To sit there is to feel both solitude and connection, the solitude of a world without companions, the connection of being part of a planet still dreaming itself awake. And as oxygen continued its slow rise, the future gathered strength. For billions of years, the Earth had been shaped by chemistry without oxygen. But now, little by little, oxygen began to linger. It poisoned some microbes, empowered others, altered the balance of oceans. Slowly, the stage was being set for the great oxidation that would transform the planet in the Proterozoic. The Archean did not see that transformation, but it carried its preparation faithfully. This is another of its lessons, that you may not see the outcome of your efforts, but they still matter, that what you prepare in silence may bloom only after you. That patience is not wasted, even if you never see its fruits. Perhaps you think of your own life, that some of your quiet repetitions, your unseen work, may be foundations for futures you cannot yet imagine. The Archean whispers that this, too, is part of the story, and so the eon stretched to its close, stromatolites grew, vent communities thrived, continents rooted. Oxygen whispered upward. The world was still microbial, still hazy, still strange, but within it, everything was preparing. Imagine now the final Archean dawn. The sun rises pale behind a haze of methane. The tide retreats, leaving stromatolites glistening in the light. The air is still unbreathable, sharp with sulfur. The land is barren, the oceans red with rust, and yet beneath the surface oxygen lingers longer. The balance tips quietly. The world holds its breath, ready for the next chapter. The Archean was not an ending. It was a prologue, a long threshold, a patient preparation. And though it stretches behind us, its memory is still here, in the rocks we touch, in the microbes that endure, in the oxygen we breathe. It is not gone. It is alive within us, around us, beneath us. The earth dreams slowly, and we are still within that dream, and so we arrive at the final breaths of the Archean. 2 billion years of patience stretch behind us, an age where oceans ruled, where continents struggled for permanence, where skies glowed orange with methane, and where life whispered in bubbles too small to see. It is easy to look back and imagine it all as stillness, as monotony stretched across endless time. But now, having walked its shores and drifted through its seas, we know differently. The Archean was alive, not loud, not hurried, but alive with persistence. Microbes dividing endlessly, stromatolites rising layer by layer, oxygen rusting the oceans. Volcanoes feeding the skies, rivers carving valleys into barren land, a moon pulling tides, a sun burning faintly, a planet preparing itself for futures it could not yet reveal. The Archean is not only history, it is a reminder that beginnings do not need to be sudden, that revolutions can come as whispers stretched across ages, that repetition, patience, and silence can shape worlds more profoundly than any sudden flame. Perhaps you let yourself rest in this truth, that the smallest acts, repeated quietly, may be the ones that endure the longest. That patience itself is a form of creation. That unseen changes may be preparing you for futures you cannot yet imagine. Now, imagine standing on that last Archean shoreline. The tide pulls back, exposing stromatolites glistening in the pale light of dawn. The air is heavy with methane, the horizon glowing orange. The moon rises immense above the sea, pulling waves outward. Beneath the surface, oxygen lingers longer than before, not yet abundant but growing. The land around you is barren, black with basalt, scarred by eruptions. And yet, in every pool, in every mat, in every vent, life continues, patient as ever. You look out and you know this world is unfinished, that it is not yet ready for forests, or animals, or people. But you also know that it is preparing, quietly, invisibly, for all of it. That the Archean itself is a threshold, a long breath before awakening. And perhaps you wonder, what was Earth really like during the Archean? Was it hostile or fertile? Silent or alive? Empty or abundant? The truth is that it was all of these at once, hostile to us but fertile for microbes, silent in voices but alive in chemistry, empty of creatures but abundant in patience. The Archean was not a world waiting to become. It was already itself, complete in its strangeness, perfect in its patience. And yet it also carried within it everything that was to come, oxygen rising quietly, continents rooting slowly, life persisting stubbornly. It was the prologue to all future chapters. Without it, there could be no forests, no rivers, no animals, no humans. Without it, there could be no present. Perhaps tonight, as you drift into sleep, you let yourself rest in that open question. The Archean remains partly a mystery, known only in fragments of rock, whispers of carbon, fossils of stromatolites. We can imagine, we can speculate, we can trace its chemistry, but we can never truly stand on its shores. We can only dream of it, and maybe that is enough. For the Archean is not only about the past. It is about patience, endurance, and preparation. It is about the quiet power of beginnings, the unseen strength of repetition, the long rhythm of time. It is about trusting that what unfolds slowly is no less real, no less profound. So let the Archean stay with you tonight as you rest. Let its oceans wash through your thoughts, its skies haze your imagination, its stromatolites remind you of patience, its oxygen whisper softly into your breath. Let it remind you that even in silence change is alive, that even in stillness life persists, that even in patience futures are being written. The Archean is gone, and yet it is here, in the rocks, in the air, in the cells of your body, in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every quiet moment of endurance. It is not only the Earth's past, it is your past as well. And as you drift into sleep, perhaps you too become part of its dream. A dream that began billions of years ago and continues still. The Earth dreams slowly, and within its dream we drift.